DC slash Marvel comic live action versus anime live action. Player five, you want to introduce this question to the group?
I mean, yeah, so I guess the question is kind of like we've seen comic books get translated into anime, or my bad, into live action, and it worked out really well, billion-dollar business. But it seems like no matter who make it, Japanese or American, when anime get translated, that shit boo boo. Why is that? My thoughts on it is that comic books aren't based in overly unrealistic actions, emotions, and emotes, and so it's easier to translate what you expected onto a screen. The second thing is that it is doable with anime. They just don't get the same budget or the same, I guess, like artistic direction. Because if you can do a Spider-Man movie, those actions aren't any more unrealistic than any anime actions, you know?
Yeah.
And then we even got the emoting out of Spider-Man with like his eyes getting bigger and stuff. So I think anime, its time will come. The community, see the comic, and also the comic book community is more used to having their source material altered because it's just how it works. Whereas the anime community is like, what? This not exactly like Dragon Ball Z, like to the T. I'm hot. So,
Yeah.
All right, just for that one note, though, we can come together and say Dragon Ball Evolution, the movie was trash, though, right?
I saw the trailer. I saw the trailer and was like, I'm not watching that shit. Stop playing.
Y'all sure it wasn't good?
Just kidding.
Goofy of the Year nomination goes to.
Nah, I'm just kidding. That shit was trash. But like to semi piggyback off what you said, player five, I do think that one of the biggest pieces to that difficulty in conversion is the way the two stories are told. I feel like in the comic book world, there are, since it's written by so many different authors and there's so many different sources to contribute to, you get a stronger relationship with the characters, and you also have more pieces that you can translate to like a live action movie where like the things that you have to respect and honor are more about the characters staying true to the characters, right? Like I can't make a Batman movie and his suit is pink, right? He has to be like Batman as I know him in the various mediums I've experienced him, and his villain has to be his villain in the various mediums I've experienced him in. But there's flexibility in that. But like in the anime world, it's a very linear story written by one person. So like the character and the villain are pretty much like that. Like that's it. There isn't really a whole lot of room to like put your own interpretations on them. And if you do, you sacrifice the story, which ends up being important because it's not informed by other people. Like their interactions with that villain are also very limited. Like Batman has over probably 1,000 at this point, if not 1,000,000 interactions with Joker. You can take any one of those, flip it, mix little pieces into it, make it your own story. Now, fucking Luffy and Blackbeard, there's like 2 interactions, maybe max, or 3 or 4 that you have to go off of. And if you're trying to make a movie off that, like you pretty much have to just stick to those interactions because once you change it, people go like, well, this wasn't in the anime or manga. And then you have to somehow be able to tie that back into what they know as the story. So I feel like the linearness of the stories also fucks it up. Like, and I like we had, I think we had already tossed this idea out in previous podcasts. The better thing for them to do is to pick a character that doesn't have a whole lot of definition, that has a lot of ambiguity, or a story that's not told within the context of the world. Like they tried to do with Detective Pikachu, where they were like, oh, hey, this is like, you have no background on this. Like there's nothing you can go to. There's no source material. All you know is who Pikachu is. So I can do whatever the fuck I want with this story. Now, did the movie end up turning out great? I finally got to watch it. I think it was a pretty mad movie. But I think that idea or concept of like, oh, grab something from the world and tell that story versus trying to tell the story of a person that's a main character or pivotal to the story is probably like a better approach. I feel like that's where they're going to end up finding success. But just going like, oh, let's take one piece and make it to the big screen. The funny part about it is that anime is pretty much told as like a movie storyline. It's just a movie that has hella fucking chapters, right? It's a very simple beginning, very simple middle, and a very simple end. But it's just like for some reason it never translates well to the screen in that way.
But I feel like there has to be a difference between the animated movies and what we actually see within the live action movies. Because the animated movies, they still receive a lot of good reviews, at least from the ones I've, heard of.
You talking about like the One Piece animated movies?
Yeah, for example, like the One Piece movies, or let's say the My Hero Academia movie. Like,
I mean, the Dragon Ball Z movie, the Dragon Ball Super movie where they fought Broly again. Yeah.
So also with that though, I think it comes with like the artist freedom. Like so when you're doing it that way versus like making an actual movie about it, like I think you can stick. It feels more familiar to you. So like my thing is like even like let's say they try to take one of the One Piece movies or even like the Dragon Ball Z Broly movie and try to bring it to the big screen. Well, now I don't have any context to the characters at all. So you got to find actors that look like the characters. Now you're bringing a whole new audience in because it's a movie. So some people semi know about Dragon Ball Z. Like there's other stuff that add to it versus like a side movie from a franchise that is really only marketed to people that are into the franchise. You feel what I'm saying? So it's like I just can just consume that. And then now you got to think about like what Player 5 said, like the budgets are smaller. So it's like on the movie screen, you have to somehow make it look as dope as the anime on a movie screen. Like with live action characters. The amount of special effects, CGI, all that shit you would need to do it to where you would feel like you could even appreciate it on the same level. I don't even think there's a budget big enough for that, to be honest.
No,
like I don't see how they would.
They would need to spend more money than they spent on Avengers to do that.
Yeah.
So, and it's not gonna happen.
I don't think so, because if we just look at the Spider-Man movie alone, the Spider-Man movie had a lot of the most recent one had a lot of anime-like movements. And I think that honestly, the first and successful anime that gets turned into the movie will not be an action-heavy one. I don't believe that's gonna work. You're gonna have to build to that, get the funds for it. But if they did something that's like medium action-heavy, like let's say if they did like a Rurouni Kenshin or Trigun or Cowboy Bebop, where it's like, hey, we can definitely get those actions and movements to happen, then they could do it.
Yeah, stuff like that would work. So I'm saying I'm referring more to like typically the most popular shonen, right? Black Clover, for example. If they make a Black Clover movie, that's going to cost a shit ton of money. Like it's just so much special effects that everything they do would involve special
effects. Yeah.
Yeah.
They walk in and it's special effects.
Like so, I mean that's just gonna be bread right there.
Yeah, it's gonna take time, but it's just like with the comic book movies. Like before this recent era, like comic book movies were trash. You know what I'm saying? You'd get one per decade that was kind of decent. So it's it's gonna take time for like enough anime niggas, like niggas that's really into anime, not a nigga that just seen Dragon Ball Z, and also into directing and shit like that, like up the ladder. Once that happens, then I think it can happen. Or that
I just think
need to fix their fucking movie fucking.
I think it just needs to get cheaper. Like I mean, as technology gets cheaper over time, it'll be cheaper for them to make that kind of movie. When that happens, then it really is just like who decides to make it. But as long as it's cheap enough, I don't see there's anything like holding them back from doing it.
I still think there's an issue with the storytelling, like because my thing is, and like I was bringing up earlier, it's like anime has a very it tells like a movie. So my thing is like you really can't get. I feel like the movie's written for you more or less.
Well, yeah, I'm not even thinking about movies in that sense because I think anime would be better suited for like a TV show as opposed to a movie. I'm just talking about live action in general. I'm not saying like an actual movie, a 2-hour movie, because like you said, it'll be along the lines of the movies, the animated movies they release now. That's for the fans of the anime already, because you can't put a One Piece movie out. What arc are you going to start with? You're going to start with that first arc that doesn't really do anything.
That's what I'm saying. I'm like,
that's what I'm saying. A TV show would work better for anime in general to me.
Yeah. I see. I felt like I said. I think, yeah. If you're talking about sticking to main characters, maybe I can see your point on maybe making it a TV show. I think if you want to go the movie route, you got to do not any main characters. It has to be like some side story built on in a big world, or you have to pick a relatively short anime, like for example, a Demon Slayer, you could probably easily cut out the fat and trim that to a 2-hour movie. Because
A
Demon
modern
Slayer has
Naruto will work.
a what?
A modern Naruto. Like if you did basically the Naruto retelling, like because the show is done, there have been ton of spinoffs. Like people are used to that being spent, like almost like they are like with American things. If you did a modern telling of Naruto, like I think it could work. It'd be like a kung fu action flick with a little bit of hint of magic in there, just like the original Batman,
Yeah,
or not the
I
original, but you know.
I'd be interested to see that too. But my other concern, I guess, is that when you take a step back and you really do look at the high level story of an anime, it's very generic. So I go like, how do you like you were saying with the Naruto thing? There's probably a potential to make that interesting, but like let's say they trim the fat and was like, all right, cool, we could fit this into 2 hours. It just becomes a movie you've seen before. You know what I'm saying? Like I don't
Actually,
see how it does anything new.
Most
that's
things
pretty
don't.
much like my big thing too. Like in the end, at least for me, like just talking about my opinion and whoever else shares it, but the biggest intrigue for anime in general was because of how fantastical a world anime can create, right? As far as like the comparison right now we're making it to DC and Marvel, in my opinion, DC and Marvel was more of how can you look at the world we live in with superhero changes to it. Anime is pretty, I mean, like, as far as like when you first get started, in a sense, all of it is like an isekai, right? Where it's like anime literally creates worlds that are just apart from what you live in now. So, and like how crazy those worlds can be, all the bright colors, all the crazy, like pretty much special effects, since we're talking about movies, it's just like that is anime, right? And like to kind of bring anime to real life is kind of like taking away what made anime so appealing in the first place. That is what I think is like the biggest issue they kind of have to deal with slash try to handle. So it's like making that actual like change happen. That's I'm still unsure of how to really do that. And like the big as far as like what you guys been talking about so far, I think the only thing that's really gonna cut it is again that super like stupid money budget. Like that's like the only way I really see it like happening where like people are truly excited about it. Again, unless we're talking about anime that is purely as close to related as to like everyday life, like slice of life, you know, like basic kind of
Yeah,
drama,
that's why.
kind of
Yeah.
situation. Because like
Like what Player
soap
Five said.
operas, like everyone loves soap operas in that kind of way. So I mean that I see, sure. But as soon as you get into like the extra, like just even slightly supernatural aspects of it, I just don't see it really happening.
Like Player Five said, I mean, it'll be like a hybrid, like not the crazy like action. Like I said, Black Clover, no. But I think Demon Slayer, I think that can easily be replicated. I feel like if they had the bread, of course, if they want to spend it.
Yeah.
But I don't think it would be tough for them to do that. I don't see Demon Slayer as much different than what like superhero movies are now. You know.
It's a very generic story with Demon Slayer. That's why I think it's easily like the world build. Demon Slayer was shit at world building. My problem is when it gets to like kind of what Juggle was saying, like the world building piece or the fantastical piece or the power system piece. That's when I feel like as a fan, if that's not captured in the movie, which I feel like it becomes hard to do, that's when you go like, oh, this kind of shit, because you're just like, well, yeah. But I feel like Demon Slayer sucked at that. So when it comes to like actually putting that in a movie, it's pretty straightforward. It's just like, oh, here's some niggas, here's like special magical shit they can do with it. Now here's the overall point. You gotta just defeat this guy Muzan. That's a very generic movie storyline. All you have to do is execute that well, and then you can probably get there. And now the budget is like, all right, cool, fancy sword shit. But like, we've done this before. So they can use a high budget to get it to Demon Slayer level, or they don't. Like they can easily make that into something reasonable. But now, long running stories like Naruto, One Piece, where it's like, damn, I appreciate the characters, the villages. Like 2 hours, you gotta make sure you touch on everyone's fan favorites. You gotta give them the respect they deserve. You gotta introduce them to the new niggas. All in 2 hours, like it's very hard. I think.
Yeah, I think all the long series are out of it. Like you're not gonna make a movie out of those shits. If it is a movie, it'll be like the movies now, where it's not related to the story at all.
Yeah.
Even Demon Slayer, I don't think. I think they'd be better off doing a movie of like kind of extrapolating like all the prequel stuff. So how like all the shit moves on, how he started out as a demon, and how like the first fire sword nigga was fighting him and stuff like that. That shit would make a better movie than the actual current like storyline.
That's right too.
And then you can make a TV. Like I said, I think a TV show would work better for most of them anyway. But TV shows don't have the budget movies have, so that's another issue itself.
Yeah. Any other points on the anime manga debate?
No, I was just trying to look up. Any video game. Well, any movies that were created after video games to see if there were any ones that lived in a highly animated world that was well received within a movie. But
did anyone check out Sonic? How was that?
I haven't watched it yet.
No, I haven't.
I honestly don't get the obsession with trying to make things live action though. I don't see why. Like,
I think is that it brings it closer to real for the actual fans. Like, I think it worked really well with the superhero movies. Like, for me, that's why I enjoyed the DC ones, at least, because I felt like that was the closest I've ever felt like I've seen up until that point of a movie that made me feel like that it was like, oh, this is what the world would be like if Superman really existed. Like, this is what that shit would feel like. That I felt like the live action aspects helps bring that realism to you over the cartoon thing, but that's my reason, I think.
And I think honestly, it makes you more money, like because you gotta remember your average.
No, of course, that's the reason for everything. You know what I mean? Like, outside of the bread, I guess. So not for the creators of the movie. I'm talking about for the consumers then, in that sense.
Like, why do we go watch it? Yeah.
Yeah.
Do people still pay to like go see certain actors in movies?
No,
do you
I don't
feel like
think
that's
so.
really a thing now? Still?
Yeah.
No.
I think so.
Well, you can definitely bet that a bunch of the Beyonce fans are going to see Black Panther 2 just to see her.
That's true.
Yeah, but she's not an actor. Like, musicians are a little different, I feel like. I don't think people are going to see actors, though.
I feel like it's only true for me in terms of like kung fu flicks, because I still watch those. So like, if I see like a Donnie Yen, a Jackie Chan, like, you know, certain names in a movie, I'll immediately put some clout to like it's probably worth the watch, or at least like a chance. But
you mean like the
other than
Expendables
those,
1 and 2?
Huh?
You mean like the Expendables 1 and 2? How they put a bunch of big names?
Oh yeah, Expendables definitely had that clout for me, where I was like, oh yeah, when they did Wesley Snipes, and when I was like, all right, yeah, I probably got to give this a shot at some point. I'm not gonna go to theaters to watch it, but I'll watch it.
True.
Oh yeah, I mean, I would watch things, but like you said, I wouldn't pay for certain things just because somebody's in it. It's kind of like what Will Smith said one time. It's like the superstar is kind of dead. It's stuff like that don't really exist anymore. I think social media kind of killed it for most people.
In fact,
unless you were grandfathered in. If you were like that already, kind of, then you might still have it. But especially any new niggas, no, they gonna never get that.
All right.
True.
All right. Is that it for this?
Yes, sir.